Why is this not set up? Default. Crisp. How about now? There we go. All right. And I tell you, Windows reboots and like half my system settings go out the window. So hello, everybody. Cinder Remedy, good to see you in chat. Thanks for dropping by. Python Nate, Tech Dinosaur, 3D Print Fan, the usual suspects. Thanks for swinging by. Happy Sunday. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. It's a long weekend here in the United States for a lot of folks. Maybe not everybody, but I get the day off tomorrow. Not sure what I'm doing tomorrow. Aside from freezing my butt off, it's going to be freezing, like single-digit temperatures in Colorado for the next couple of days, along with tons of snow. Hooray! So I will be staying inside and probably working on blog posts and stuff like that for work. So cool. How's everybody else doing? If you're hanging out in chat with us, say hello. Let us know where you're from. Where's everybody from? Cinder Remedy, good to have you in chat. Yeah, I got the audio fixed on the theme song, or on the intro song or whatever. I had to rebuild all the virtual audio settings and whatever. I like tore it all apart and rebuilt it all. So big thanks to Jonan for getting me all set up with all that stuff. It made it a lot easier to then go back and actually rebuild a lot of that stuff the way that I needed to. So it was a huge help knowing how to do that ahead of time. So cool deal, cool deal. Let's see. I think tonight I'm mostly going to be going through a backlog of questions. I've got a bunch in the Discord channel. You can do bang Discord in the chat like this, and that should get you over to Discord. If that does not, you can go check out Linktree. Linktree, my username on there is the same as Twitch and same as Twitter, same as LinkedIn. So you can do link. It's like linktr.ee/IanDouglas736. I don't think I have a bang command for that. But you can go through Linktree to get to Discord. Worst case scenario. Cinder Remedy says, not sure if you could help or have the answer. I'll try. What would be some good interview questions to practice for a web app security role as a pen tester? Ooh, good question. Pen testing is an interesting kind of realm. Someone asked me a couple of years ago, like what parts of development and the IT and the tech industry are going to be like the big money makers in the future. This was 2-3 years ago, maybe 3-4 years ago. And I said, DevOps is not going away and neither is security. Studying either of those, you're going to be pretty set for a lot of things. So security is definitely one of those things. Let's change the color here. Let's go, let's do green. So are you looking for questions to practice that you might get asked as a pen tester? Is that like the kind of role that you're going for? Give me a little more background on that. Interview questions to practice for a web app. So DevSecOps, yeah, is the long-term goal. I want to get my foot in the door with security. Okay, cool. So if you're looking for questions that you could get asked in the interview and you want to be able to practice those, I think it's great that you want to start on that and you want to start practicing that. The sooner you start practicing that, the better, especially if that's like a long-term goal. The sooner you can start on that practice, the better. So what I would do, what kinds of questions are going to be most relevant for that? I think, if I were the interviewer, I'd be asking about things like OWASP top 10 and how to protect against those kinds of things, or how would you advise the team to protect against those things? In a DevOps kind of role, like just trying to separate the two for a sec. So we've got InfoSec, and we got DevOps. And when we think about how, like in a Venn diagram, like how those things might overlap a tiny bit, that's your DevSecOps. And if you've got a DevOps background, part of your role is to teach others on the team, like this is how we deploy things, and this is how we need to bundle things up, and you kind of help educate everybody a little bit. In SecOps, you're doing similar things where you're teaching people like this is how to do security scanning, and this is how to pay attention to these kinds of things. With the intersection of DevSecOps, you're going to be responsible for things like how do we make sure that this thing deploys properly, it deploys securely, that it's not that whatever code we're deploying is safe and secure and all that kind of stuff. RC Maniac, good to see you. Need to make some pulled pork. Save me some. So as far as like where to find good interview questions for that, I would probably start with Googling, and I hate to use that as an answer, like, oh, just go Google. But I think some search terms that you could probably look up there would be like DevSecOps interview questions. I would also reach out to people that are in that role. I'm not currently in that role. I've done like hybrid, like bits and pieces of those roles. But I've never actually interviewed for a full-time role for that. So what I would do is I would Google like common interview questions for that type of role for DevSecOps. But then I would also reach out to people in your network or just people in general on Twitter and LinkedIn, whatever social networking you use for work-related things. And I would say like, hey, I'm looking for a mentor. I want to move into this, in the future. And I'm looking for people that can kind of coach me on interviews and things like that, and ask them like, what kinds of questions do you ask? Or if you're in this role, what kinds of questions have you been asked in previous interviews? I think that would probably be your best bet, is get people who are in the industry and ask them what their experience was, ask them what kinds of questions, what kinds of topics are going to be most relevant for them. Like I said, I've been out of the security realm for a little while, so I don't have good up-to-date information on that. And so I think the key there is like find people who are currently in that role and talk to them about what their most recent experience is. If they had to interview somebody, what kinds of questions would they want to know about their background and things like that. I know that sounds like really generic advice, so I apologize I can't get into much more detail than that, but yeah, the security side of it's not something I'm terribly familiar with. Kinjaslot asks in chat, what KPIs are common to measure engineering team performance? So KPI is key performance indicator. So from an engineering manager's point of view, or from a team lead point of view, what kinds of things do we commonly measure about the performance of the team? Performance can mean a lot of things. Is it what we call velocity? Is it how much work you're getting done over a period of time? Or is it performance as in you're building code and that code is well optimized, it doesn't need to be refactored, it makes it through code review quickly? I think these are all different kinds of metrics that you could be tracking about your team. Excuse me. I think that would, excuse me. There we go, that's better. I think that those would be a handful of things that you would want to track. So think about how much work are we getting done? How quickly are we getting that done? So like the quantity of work, but also the frequency of the work and time and distance, calculated together is, in the physics world is something we call velocity, but velocity is also a term that we use in agile development around how many points per day per person are being built over the course of a sprint. If you do points on stories. So that would be one thing you could measure. You could measure, hey, once Ian finishes that code and it goes into code review, how often does that code get kicked back to Ian because Ian didn't do something right, or Ian didn't follow a checklist, or Ian missed something, or somebody just caught a bug and it needed to go back to Ian. And so you could track those different kinds of things. I would probably track those separately. So I would say, like, if somebody's not following process, you need to track that in one way. If somebody is following the process, but then their code has a bug that you catch before it goes out, you would track that separately. And then I would track, like, if they do like your process checklist and it gets through code review and everybody's like thumbs up on it and it gets deployed, I would also track that as a metric. That's going to tell you who your better performers on the team are going to be. But I think it's important to realize not everybody on the team can be held to that same standard. Not everybody is going to write code at the same speed. Not everybody has the same level of experience. Not everybody has the same level of domain knowledge within the company. And so to compare two people side by side and say, well, Ian wrote 1,000 lines of code last week and Ian only wrote 200 lines of code this week, so Ian that only wrote 200 lines of code, like you need to do better. Maybe the Ian that wrote 200 lines of code, maybe that person doesn't have as much experience. Maybe they're newer on the team. Maybe they need some training. So I wouldn't use it as a disciplinary action. I would definitely use it as an information point and say, hey, these are just metrics that we're tracking about performance of the team. This is kind of what we're seeing as far as your performance. But I think that a lot of engineers are going to feel very micromanaged if you're tracking stats like that and holding them accountable to it. Now, if there's like a bonus or something attached to it, then that's different. But there are a lot of companies out there that track these kinds of metrics and they build scores. And I'm thinking of one really big FANG company named after a jungle in South America that does this a lot. And they basically track everybody against these scores. And every quarter they let go the bottom 6% of their team by these scores, whether they've actually met expectations or not. They actually let people go, which is a ridiculous thing to think about, because if you're there and you're doing your job and you're doing it to the best of your ability, but somebody up the chain is looking at just pure numbers and go, this person needs to get let go because they're not performing at the same rate as everybody else, then what you're looking for there are just an army of robots that do the exact same work to the exact same quality as one another. And that's very unrealistic to expect as an engineer. And so I think you do need to be a little bit careful about why you're tracking those metrics. So yes, I think you can track them. I would also track things like not just are they writing code, but are they writing documentation? Are they sharing that knowledge with a team? And if so, how? And if not, why not? I would make that a metric to kind of track over time and find out like who's writing the code, but who's helpful on the team, because it's the helpful people on the team that you want to keep around. People that can just grind out code, you can hire replacements for them. What's a lot harder to replace are people that really care about sharing that knowledge on the team and building the team up and making the team better. And so I would track metrics to identify those kinds of folks. But again, if you're doing it as a disciplinary action, I think your engineering team is probably going to revolt a little bit. And so I think you do need to be a little bit careful about it. So just something to keep in mind there. RC Maniac mentions in chat, that's one reason I suggest not working for a company named after a rainforest in South America. Yeah. Amazon has a lot of bad business practice, and that's just one of them. Is they're like, no matter how well you do, we're only allowed to give out a certain number of meets expectations or exceeds expectations, and everybody else doesn't meet expectations, and therefore they get let go. And it's a really silly thing to do. But that's how they run their business, and that's why they have such high turnover. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but that's how they choose to do their business. So it is what it is. I'm actually really happy. In retrospect, I'm really happy I didn't get a job at Amazon. I think I would have been not as happy there, knowing those kinds of things. Like, you hear the stories, but I think at a certain point you're like, oh, maybe it won't affect that team, but it's a cultural thing, so it's going to affect everybody. RC Maniac says in chat, KPIs are a boogeyman for many. Put on a pedestal by managers, and then you're the scorn of the contributor, another worker. Yeah, for sure. Metrics are helpful though, and I can see it. Having been an engineering manager, I used to track this kind of stuff too. And I can see the value from the business perspective in being able to identify who your top performers are so that you work extra hard to make sure that they're happy and they stay. At the same time, your responsibility to the whole team is to get everybody to stay, not just your top performers. And I think what you need to track, what you need to do with these KPIs is find out who the top performers are not on your team. Like, who is not a top performer on your team, and then train them and make them better. Make them a top performer. Get them to a point where they become a top performer on your team, because that's just going to level everybody up. And I think if you show that you're willing to invest in them and say, hey, over the last week, we noticed you wrote 200 lines of code. That's great. I'd like to push you next week and see if we can get to 250 or 300 lines of code. Like, what do you think it would take? What do we need? Do you need extra training? Do you need a little bit of help understanding some things? Like, what do you need from me to get you to that next level? but don't do it as a disciplinary action. I think as soon as you bring discipline into it, or what we call a performance improvement plan or a PIP, then people are going to start to really, not regret, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to really hate that you're tracking that kind of stuff. Because again, they're going to feel very micromanaged if you're diving into those kinds of things and say, hey, like, you missed this checkbox on the process, what happened? If it could be like, hey, of the last 10 pull requests, 8 of them were all missing this documentation thing. We really need you to get better at doing that documentation. So for the next sprint, I want you to focus specifically on that. That's different than just saying like, hey, you keep missing this checkbox, do better. Like, tell them how to do better. Tell them why you want them to do better. There's a video clip that I watched one time. It's like, if you're disciplining someone on the team, ask them like, do you know what the expectations are? Can you tell me what those expectations are? Can you tell me why you're not meeting those expectations? But again, that feels very micromanagey. And so I think you do need to be a little bit careful about how you approach it in a way that shows that you're doing it because you care about the employee and not because you're just caring about the business side of it. You need to care about them as a person and find out, like, is there something going on? Like, is there something we need to talk about? Like, have a chat with them about it. I think that that's going to go a lot farther than just tracking metrics and then holding people to a standard that they feel they can't reach. I appreciate the question though. Yeah, Kendra Lost, if you've got other questions along those lines, like I'm happy to provide perspective. Having been an engineering manager, I'm happy to provide my own perspective on that kind of stuff. Cool. Let's dive into a couple more anonymized questions. So I've been adding them to Discord, and again, you can do bang Discord and chat. And if you are not currently on the Discord, if you do bang Discord, click on that link and tell me whether that link works. If not, I'm going to try to fix that link right now and see if we can find out. Oh, that link expires in 7 days. That's why. Expire never. No limit on use. Copy. Okay, let me go fix that right now. So stream elements. I will go fix that right now. RC Maniac says in chat, I actually saw something that made me happy on Friday. We were covering goals, and I saw my team had a quarter or a year goal of hiring a senior SRE, hire a senior dev, and to hire or promote 1 or 2 junior devs. The only holdup is that we acquired another company and kind of paused on hiring because we may essentially, quote unquote, hire from the other company. No plans to let anybody go, though. That's a good thing. Absolutely, it's a good thing. Yeah, so Kindred Sloth, let me fix that link. That's not going to work yet. I think the link that I had on Stream Elements ended up being a 7-day link. So I'm going to go replace it with a permanent link so that folks can join us. Chatbot. Chat commands. Is it under chat commands? Yep, there it is. Cool, let me go fix that link right now. All right, so if we do bang Discord now, so this one ending in ACR, this is a new like unlimited use permanent link or whatever for Discord. So that should work for everybody if you want to join us on Discord. I will do occasional resume reviews on Discord. I prefer to do them on the stream just so they can get up on YouTube and other people can watch them. So I've been hitting other forums lately and just dropping in like, hey, I do free resume reviews. And for 2022, they're all going to be free. And I am going to be working on the site probably this week or next week around getting the new schedule up. I've got some guests lined up for March. And then I also want to document the donations and how I'm like giving away donations and stuff like that get donated to me, like buy me a coffee, that's going out. Any like subscriptions I get here on Twitch, that's all going out to other people. It's not going into my pocket. And so I want to be really transparent about that, and I want to get that stuff up on the website. So, yeah, I'm hoping to do that in the next week or two. As far as the other thing that I've been really slacking on are the new mailing lists. I've been talking about them for a year, more than a year, and I put them on hold for the job hunt, and then I got into the job hunt, and then I finished the job hunt, and now I'm like crazy busy at work. So one of these days I'm going to get back to it. So my goal now is, instead of like trying to rebuild all 4 at the same time, I'm going to get like one new one out the door. And I'm going to get that published and out and go from there. You will see the occasional Stream Elements chat message go out saying, hey, please follow Ian the Postman. That's my work account. I also stream for work. And at work, we made a graphic novel called The API First World. It's actually a really cool graphic novel. And I've got a second copy that's shrink wrapped. And so if you follow Ian the Postman, the link just showed up there in chat. If you follow that account on Twitch as well, I'm actually working through a series right now called 30 Days of Postman. And on day 30, I'm going to do a giveaway for this. And I'm going to ship it anywhere in the world. Like whoever wins, I'm going to ship it to you free of charge. So give that account a follow so that you know when day 30 is coming up. Because as soon as day 30 is done, I'm going to do a giveaway. And so you can swing by for that. Cool. Ken just lost said the new linked work. That's great. Awesome. All right. So let's dive into some more of these anonymous questions. Let me get the text editor up and running just so I can put them in the thing down below here, because it's showing a question from last time. So let me go pull that up real quick, and we'll get it going here. There it is. Alrighty. Cool. So this one was an interesting one that I came across. Is it a good idea to warn your interviewer in an email before the interview that your English skill set is bad? Yeah, I think you can absolutely ask for any kind of accommodation, whether it's a language barrier or a disability or an accessibility thing that they need to take into account. Absolutely. You talk to the recruiter about that. It doesn't necessarily have to be the next person interviewing you. I would let your point of contact at the company know, whoever the recruiter is that you're talking to, let them know and ask them to like let the team know that that's going to be interviewing you. That's their job, basically, to share that information with others on their team. It's okay to do. It's not going to put you at a disadvantage. If they like your skill set and they're already interested in interviewing you, they'll figure out a way to make it work. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, especially with like disabilities and accessibility and things like that. If you start getting through the interview process and then you're like, by the way, I need some accommodation for this thing, and suddenly they ghost you, you may want to find out if they've ghosted you because of the disability or accessibility, because then it's a lawsuit. But if it's just something where it's like, you have a really hard time communicating in English, and it's an English-speaking company and interviewer, you could ask if there's someone else at the company that speaks your native language and see whether they can accommodate that. That may be a possibility, but it depends on the size of the company. But if you were getting ghosted or sort of biased against because of a disability, accessibility, or some accommodation that you have asked them for, then you can absolutely fight for that. So keep those things in mind as you go. But yeah, you can absolutely talk to your interviewer. And if you want to do it via email, that's probably the best way to do it. Just to let them know, like, hey, I don't do well with the English language, but I really am interested in the company and what you do. Like, find some way of communicating that with them. And if the company is a respectable company, they're going to do everything they can to accommodate you. So. Roxio, good to see you in chat. Roxio asks in chat, is there a minimum years of experience to be considered a senior developer? Not really. I've heard people call themselves a senior dev when they've got 4 years experience. I've heard people with 4 years experience call themselves a junior dev. A lot of it depends on the progression of your skill and what a company expects of a senior level dev. Some of that you can glean from job descriptions. Some of it you can see from like levels.fyi and careerladder.dev, sites like that, where they'll break down like, this is roughly what an entry-level dev should do. This is roughly what an intermediate-level dev should do. This is what a senior-level dev should do. And I've talked about it on a stream recently about how as a senior-level dev, yeah, you're there to work. You're there to like really optimize code and make code really great and perform well and do extra things. But you're also there to help mentor other people on the team and help level them up to where you are. And so I would take those kinds of things into account. But that doesn't really come necessarily with the years of experience. Like you must have worked at least 5 years or 10 years or whatever. I worked at one company that said that a senior dev had to have a minimum of 5 years. And I interviewed somebody who had 4 years experience. And my VP of engineering said, well, we're not going to hire them at a senior level. I'm like, I've interviewed them. I've vetted them. They are a senior level dev. Like, you can trust me on this. I am vouching for their skill. They are a senior level dev, even though they've only got 4 years. And I had to fight for them. I advocated for them. And they brought them in at a senior level. And that was because I saw a progression in their skill. And during the interview process, I was able to ask them questions about how they were doing things like optimizations and how they were also dealing with people on their team and mentoring on their team. And they were exactly doing that. And that was what we were holding our own senior level devs to as far as accountability. And so I was able to kind of advocate for them to my VP of engineering to say, they meet the following criteria. According to that criteria, they should be coming in at a senior level, even though they only had 4 years of experience. But I've had other people call themselves a senior dev with 4, 5, 6 years experience that don't do well in interviews, that haven't had that depth of experience. And that's where I've said on the stream in the past, having 5 years of experience is different than having 1 year of experience 5 times. So if you're doing like entry level work over and over and over and over again, and you're not really progressing, you're not really getting better, you're just doing the same thing over and over again, then you don't really have 5 full years of experience. You have a couple of years of experience over and over, and that's different. So it's not really a hard set, like it's, you know, anybody with 5 years in the industry should be considered a senior dev. I don't really see that. I see it more as, how have you progressed in your job? Show me that progression. Show me how you've grown. Show me how you've made something better within your company, how you've improved something within the company. To me, that is a senior level dev. So hopefully that helps. But that's my perspective on it. Ask others though. Other people are going to have different opinions on what makes a senior dev, how you kind of level up from one level to another level. I've covered it on a couple of previous streams too. You can go check those out too. But those would be a few things that I would take a look at there. Kinja Sloth asks in chat, what are some resources you recommend for engineering managers? What kinds of day-to-day tools need to be mastered? When I was an engineering manager at one company, I was a little more hands-on. Another one, I was focusing more just on more like project management and team management. So it was like team retention and hiring, but also what are the overall projects like from a business perspective. So it depends a little bit on your company and what their expectation is of you as an engineering manager. At the very least, anyone in an engineering manager position is going to be doing some amount of people management. And so you're going to have some amount of taking care of people on your team, doing one-on-ones, doing hiring, retention, letting people go, unfortunately, is part of the job. As far as tooling and things like that go, I mean, I've used everything from Google Docs to Jira just for my own tracking kinds of things as a manager. I've talked about them actually on the last stream. This company called Hypercontext. This is their logo. If you want to check out Hypercontext, I think it's hypercontext.com. It's a company based up in Toronto, and they make a management tool for doing one-on-one meetings. And basically, how are you getting to know the people on your team? How are you building up that sort of professional relationship with them, getting to know what motivates them and so on? I would spend a lot of time studying on those kinds of things and studying how to really connect with people and understand what drives them. There's a book from Daniel Pink called Drive that I found really helpful. It's a bit of an older book though, but it kind of talks a little bit about Agile concepts before Agile was really a thing. And it was really like, go find what motivates people and let them know how their role fits into the vision of, you know, bigger picture kind of thing. Because people want to know that their contributions have impact on the company. They want to know that they are a part of something bigger. that's going to drive a lot more motivation than just dollars in the bank. Although dollars in the bank is a pretty good motivation for a lot of folks in the tech industry too. So I would look at some resources like that. I've also picked up some engineering management books that I can share. If you want to contact me offline, I can share a list of management books that I've read or that I've recently purchased and received as gifts for holidays and so on, that I'd be happy to share with you as well. Books that I've looked into about like doing more modern style management and what that might entail, because I was maybe going to get into a management role, but I decided I wanted to get into more of a contributor role with Postman, and much happier in that role. I'm very happy not doing people management right now. All right, well, let me go mark that last question is done. And then let's talk about this one. This one wasn't very well explained, but I think I can unpack this one a little bit. I think this one's going to be really relevant to people that are coming out as new grads who are maybe going to be attending job fairs and open house events and things like that for recruiting. So yeah, sorry, Kinja Sloth. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you want, or Twitter. Use the same username on all those platforms, so you can find me that way. Connect with me, and I'll share the list of management books with you. So this question came in: what happens during recruitment open house events? And this can also be related to things like job fairs and big like conferences around like big hiring types of events. In my experience, so I've been to many. I have attended them as a job seeker, but I've also attended them as an engineering manager or as an interview lead trying to find people. And so typically what happens is companies will buy a booth, they will pay money to be there, and they will have a booth of some kind, and they'll have some of their hiring managers there, probably some recruiters. They may have the occasional engineer, but usually it's the recruiting team that's going to be at these events, and they're going to really try to sell you on why their company is awesome, why you should apply for their company, and all the perks and all the benefits and all that kind of stuff. The problem is the big tech companies tend to really overshadow those kinds of events, and so big tech companies tend to spend a lot of money on the big booths that attract a lot of attention, and they do all kinds of swag giveaways and things like that. And so other companies that pay to be at these events, it's not that they get ignored, but they certainly don't get as much attention from the attendees. But that can actually be a really good advantage for you if you do attend these job fairs or open house events where there are many companies there. Go find the not big tech companies, because they're going to be desperate for resumes and desperate to meet people. You may get an interview on the spot, and they may say like, hey, let's just go over here and do like a real quick, like 20-minute interview, or, it's the equivalent of their recruiting phone screen, basically. Like, tell us about your projects, tell us about your background, why are you interested in our company, kind of thing. But if it's a job fair where you're literally going around and you just see like tons of companies, and you end up bringing a very generic resume, because you're not going to have you're not going to have the means to sit down and like customize a resume for them on the spot. But if you know that the event is coming up and you know who the companies are that are going to be there, and there are companies that you want to target, then it's really great if you can customize a resume for them. And you can go look at my other videos on YouTube and go look at how I kind of talk about building the big resume and shorten it down to customize it. If you can customize that resume and walk into that job fair and say, hey, I put together a customized resume specifically for your company, they're going to be like, you did what? The fact that you planned ahead for that is going to like yell all kinds of great things at them as far as signals go, of like, oh, wow, you really like our company. You went through, the process of making us a custom resume and finding us at the job fair to give us that custom resume and to meet with us in person. They're going to love that kind of thing. If I understand this specific question correctly, though, based on the wording, they're talking about one company having an open house event where they're trying to recruit people to their one company. If that's the scenario, then it's not going to be a bunch of companies. It's not going to be like a big job fair. It's going to be one company hosting a big event. So again, similar kinds of things could apply. You could tailor a resume for them and walk in, find recruiters, talk to them. You might get interviews on the spot. So what generally is going to happen is you'll walk in and you'll be greeted by people. There might be like little information sessions where you can go talk to different people on the team, or they might have like a rotating kind of, 20-minute talk or 30-minute talk about here's what it's like to work at our company, and here's what it's like to, apply for a job here. This is what our perks are like. This is what our salaries are like. I mean, or it might just be open Q&A where they present a little bit of information. And then if they open it up for questions, the first question everybody should ask is, what are the salary bands? Just so that the company can be kind of put on the spot. Maybe they'll be a little more transparent about it if you put them on the spot. And then, like I said, you'll probably have, if it's an open house at the company, then you get to tour the office a little bit. You kind of get to see like where people work. Nowadays, though, with everything being remote, it's a lot less likely that you're going to have like an actual sort of open house event, and it's going to be more of a virtualized kind of thing where like everybody joins like a Zoom call where they say like, hey, this is what we have going on. We have some breakout rooms. If you want to go join that breakout room, you can kind of move yourself around and kind of go to these different info sessions and whatever. So it really depends on how the company organizes those kinds of things. And so I would say in the remote world, it's probably a very different kind of experience. If I were to do one, if I were a hiring manager now and I was setting up something like this, I would have a whole bunch of breakout rooms where the first one is just like general information about what kinds of roles we have, how to apply. You can ask our recruiters questions about the application process or the interview process, and then have another whole room where you can like go talk to a couple of engineers about what it's like to actually work there. Maybe ask them a little bit about the interview process. And then maybe another one where you're actually like, meeting with a hiring manager and you're asking them more specific questions. If I were setting something like that up, that's how I would structure it. I haven't been to a virtual open house event, so I can't speak too specifically about what companies are doing nowadays. But if I were doing it, that's how I would kind of organize that thing. And then I would market the heck out of it. I would be going to a lot of schools and boot camps and things like that to advertise like, hey, we got this open house event going on. We're hiring 50 roles, come hang out with us, come ask your questions, and, go from there. Cool. If you have other questions, you're welcome to drop them in chat at any time. I also decided this weekend I'm not going to stream on Facebook anymore. And on Thursdays, I'm only going to stream to LinkedIn on Thursdays. So Sundays, you got me here on Twitch. And on Thursdays, you got me on Twitch. Thursdays, I will also be on LinkedIn. But I'm not going to bother streaming to Facebook anymore. Got very, very little engagement there. And it was kind of taxing on my internet connection and my PC to try to broadcast to multiple systems at the same time. So I'm not going to bother doing that anymore. I think if I had a better audience or a bigger audience on Facebook or more engagement on Facebook, then I might consider it, or I might have considered staying, and I might consider like re-streaming again on Facebook in the future if the audience picks up. But for now, I'm just going to post on Facebook like, hey, I'm on Twitch. Go find me on Twitch. All right, let's get into another question here. This one was a little bit vaguely worded, so I'm going to do my best to kind of unpack this one and kind of get at the heart of what I think they're asking. What are the questions that an interviewer should ask interviewees, and what should the right answers be to the questions? So this one's pretty vague. I think what they're asking here is, what kinds of questions am I going to get asked at an interview? A lot of that is going to depend very highly on who the company is, what the role is, and what level the role is. Like, is it a junior level role, intermediate, senior, and so on? But also, what kind of role is it? Is it a development role? Is it DevOps? Is it security? Is it developer relations? Is it sales? Is it marketing? There's going to be a lot of different answers for this, unfortunately. But that's a lot of why I'm here. And so you can go check out my daily email series, where I do cover a lot of common questions in the tech industry. And you can kind of go see like how I might answer some of those questions. But I think to really answer this one well, I would probably want to sit down with the person and say like, what company are you applying to? What kind of role are you applying to? What's your experience been? Like, what's your background been? What kinds of projects have you built? And then I could probably help shape like what kinds of questions you're likely to get asked. As far as what are the right questions to those, I mean, uh, in my daily email series, I don't strive to tell you like this is the perfect answer to give. What I do in the daily email series is explain this is why I'm asking the question. This is kind of what I'm hoping to hear in your answer. This is what I hope not to hear in your answer. But this is why this kind of question is important to my company. And I've I basically discuss those questions from a hiring manager's perspective and from the business perspective of this is why we're asking you this question. This is why this kind of thing is important to us. And not so much from, oh, if you get asked a question about the HTTP lifecycle, these are the 5 things that you want to say. I've never wanted to write like, here's the ultimate guide to blah, blah, blah. Anybody that publishes something and say, this is the ultimate guide to such and such is like, yeah, for about 6 months. And then the information is stale. Like, unless you're in there keeping it up to date all the time, it's no longer the ultimate guide to anything after 6 months in the tech industry for sure. Potato Cabbage 17, appreciate the follow. I'm going to give you some blinky lights and some applause. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Appreciate you dropping by. Curious how you found us. And you're welcome to drop questions in. I'm going through kind of a backlog of questions that have been submitted to me. So I take questions on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Discord, that people ask that they want to ask anonymously. They don't necessarily want to be on Twitch and have the questions show up over here in the chat panel. So I always tell people you can ask questions anonymously. You can connect with me on LinkedIn and send me a direct message there. You can just send me a direct message on Twitter. My DMs are always open on Twitter. You can join our Discord community and you can ask me privately there. And I will always ask them anonymously. I'll put them in the little chat box under my picture here in the interface, and I will never attach your name to it. So you are more than welcome to ask anonymous questions at any time. And so these are just a handful of questions that I've had kind of coming in over the last several weeks that I want to make sure that I'm getting to and answering for folks on the stream. Potato Cabbage says, my boss isn't watching, so it's all good. Well, in that case, ask away. I mean, if they know that your online handle is Potato Cabbage 17, then, that might be one thing. But yeah, if you've got any kind of question about interview process, tech industry, things like that, you're more than welcome to drop those in chat. Give you a little background on me. I've been in the industry for 26 years as a developer and manager, hiring team lead, the whole bit. Right now I'm doing developer relations. I authored this whole website called techinterview.guide where I give away tons of free content. Everything I do is free. The stream is free. Sorry if you had to watch an ad to get into it, but everything I do here is free. Any money that gets donated to me, I'm turning around and like giving back away to like code schools and boot camps where diversity is part of their mission. Because as a white dude in tech, I want to see other people in tech besides other white dudes. And so any money that gets donated to me, I'm donating back out to others to get them into the tech industry. And so people that ask questions, I'm just kind of like grabbing all those for tonight and I'm going through that backlog. I don't have any resumes to review tonight. And this coming Thursday is probably just going to be more Q&A. I've still got more backlog that I haven't even put into the Discord channel. I've got other backlog questions that I need to get on there that I will then answer on live Twitch here. The following Thursday, March 3rd, I'm going to have a panel of other people who do developer relations, and we're going to talk about what developer relations is in the industry, what kind of skills you need to get into that kind of role. We're going to talk to people that like came straight out of code school and got into developer relations, or people that went into a developer type of role and then went into developer relations and so on. We've got some pretty fun people lined up for that. Got some folks from New Relic. I think I got one person from PayPal lined up and a handful of others. So yeah, please come hang out with us. That would be fantastic. And that'll be Thursday, March 3rd. But for tonight, it's Q&A. This Thursday is going to be Q&A. Next Sunday is going to be Q&A. Hopefully next Sunday I'll get some resume reviews. If you want a resume review, you can submit a PDF file to this URL. It's techinterview.guide/resume review. The only thing I ask is that you anonymize your contact information. If you want to leave your name on there, it's up to you, but please anonymize your phone number and your email address and like any links to GitHub or LinkedIn and things like that. But basically I go to a new screen layout where, my head is much smaller on the screen, and I kind of show a browser window where I kind of zoom in on your resume and I talk about what I like about it and things I would coach you to change. So yeah, that's kind of the spiel. But thanks for dropping by, Potato Cabbage. Like I said, if you got questions, you're welcome to drop those in chat, kind of as we go. Someone asked me this question, and I wasn't there. There's two ways that I could take this question. They basically said, as a software engineer, do you help your people fine tune their resumes? One way that I could read this is, if I'm an engineering manager on a team, do I help my current team fine tune their resumes so that they can go find another job? If I'm a good engineering manager, I'm going to do everything I can to retain them on my team and not let them take another job. Hopefully they're happy with me and what we do as a business, that they're not going to be looking for another job. But if I'm an engineering manager, I also really care about the individual people on my team as people, and I want them to be successful in life. And I've told a story on the stream before about how I had someone on my team say that they were interested in doing something completely different from what our company was doing, and they wanted to go pursue another job. And I'm like, okay, we'll make it happen. And they were kind of shocked that I was going to let them go. The CEO was really, really mad at me for not trying harder to retain them. And my argument back to the CEO is, well, why would I keep them on the team if they're not going to be happy? If they really want to pursue something else, and they've got some skill, and they've got an introduction at that company, they've got the means to go get an interview and get that job, why wouldn't I do that for them? And after a year and a half, they ended up coming back to the company. I had since left, but they actually came back to the company at that point, because they left on good terms, and they didn't like that other sort of thing that they were doing anyway. So they're like, let's go back to what we're familiar with and what we already knew, and they came back to the company. And so for me, that's a win-win. It helped them kind of pursue something as a potential dream. And when they realized it didn't work out, we welcomed them back. And I think that that's a sign of good management and a good company culture when people are willing to come back. The other way that I could read this question is as a live stream, you've been an engineering manager, so do you help people fine-tune resumes? Yes, I do. I do resume reviews on the stream. I think, though, that this question was asking, if I'm currently an engineering manager and I have people on my team, do I help them keep their resume up to date? I would say for something like that, I would probably want to encourage people on my team to document what they do and keep a track record of the kinds of projects that they've been involved in, how they were involved, what they did well. I think the longer you've been in the industry, the easier it is to forget all the things that you've done and the impact that you've had on different teams. And so if you can reach out to managers and say hey, do you remember me being on the team? Do you remember what stood out to you as my biggest impact on the team? And then fill in your own resume from there. But I think that if that's something that you can document while you're at the job, whether you keep a journal, and keep some sort of, book handy where you're writing that kind of stuff down, or you use a website like Polywork where you're jotting down notes of things that you've done and the impact that that's had on your team and things like that. I would say you absolutely need to keep things up to date somewhere, somehow, whether that's even just keeping your own localized resume up to date. I would store it on, some sort of online storage, like a Google Drive or something that is not tied to your workplace. So if you do lose that job, you don't lose access to it. But I would say, yeah, absolutely keep track of what you do. And when you hear me talk about resumes, I talk about building this really big resume where you list every project, every detail, every little thing that you ever did at that company or within that project. Document everything that you can. Write out bullet points about what the impact was, how you developed it, what you learned, as part of that process. And then when you go customize that resume, trim away the things that your future company isn't going to care about. Trim out everything that they don't need to see. But you've still got a copy of that on this other really big resume. that's probably the number one way of keeping track of that stuff. And then it's always going to be up to date. Like as you do something at work, go add it to your resume right away, like your own copy. I wouldn't rely on a manager to help you with it. I would do it myself. Like I would take that initiative on yourself to go take care of your own resume and don't rely on other people to help you keep that up to date. If that makes sense. RC Maniac says in chat, definitely keep a log of what you did, comments that you've gotten. This is also really important when you're doing one-on-ones with your manager, especially when it comes time to do reviews and anniversaries and things like getting a raise, or you want a raise. Well, you better tell me why you deserve that raise. And if you walk in and be like, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and you've actually got that listed out and written down somewhere, okay, I can't argue with why you think you deserve a raise, because yes, you've contributed to all this stuff and I can see that impact, that lasting impact on the company. But if you walk in and be like, you know, it's my anniversary, I expect a raise. I'm like, what have you done? Like, remind me again, like what impact you've had. It's going to be a lot harder for me to recall because I'm not perfect either as a manager. I'm going to try to document those kinds of things, but I want to know that you're also keeping track of that. You shouldn't rely on your manager to do that. So as much as possible, I would try very hard to document that yourself. And then when you're getting ready to go into that review meeting with your boss where you want to ask for a raise, send them that list of accomplishments ahead of time and say, hey, I would like to talk about a raise. When we have that one-on-one or we have that review in a month, I would like to discuss getting a raise. And just as a reminder, these are the accomplishments I've had over X period of time, for your consideration for that. Just that way they can kind of read that over, because if you walk into that meeting and say, I'd like a raise, it's not going to happen that day. They have to go get approval and it's got to work through payroll, whatever. And it might take a month and a half for it to actually kick in. It's not going to be like, okay, tomorrow you get the raise. It might be retroactive back to that date, but it's not going to be immediately applied to your next paycheck. And so the more sort of forward notice you can give them, like, hey, when we have that meeting in a month, I'd like to talk about a raise. Here's my list of accomplishments. Do all that all in one shot. And now they can kind of review those accomplishments and they can get that ball rolling so that when they do sit down in a month, they can talk about like, yep, I got everything in, it's rolling, it's going to hit like the next paycheck or maybe the paycheck after that, but it is in the works. But if you just show up at the meeting and say, I would like a raise and here's my accomplishments, now you're starting that window of, okay, well, I got to go back and review all of this stuff and go talk to finance and blah, 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 and get approval, etc. And so it's going to delay things. So do it up front. I think that'll be your best shot for that. Potato Cabbage asks in chat, what are your opinions on certifications? I'm looking to get an AWS cert because I lack cloud skills at my current company. I want to stay up to date. Do you think it's worth the investment for finding another job? And you found my stream on YouTube, by the way. Great. I'm glad you found it on YouTube. And I'm happy that you stopped by live to kind of interact with us too. My opinion on certifications. Some certifications are better than others. Those with like a well-known name, I think, are sort of more valuable or perceived as more valuable within the industry than just no name. Like, oh yeah, I did this Udemy course. Well, unless the person that wrote the Udemy course is semi-famous, it's like, okay, you went through some curriculum. But if it's like, oh, I actually got an AWS certification for like their architecture associate, like the cloud architect associate certification, it's like, cool, I'm actually studying that one myself. And it's hard. There's a lot in there. And I'm not excited about the proctored exam either, where they want to like see a picture of my desk. Like my desk is awful right now. My desk is so messy right now. But yeah, I mean, some of those certifications are very serious. And so they carry a lot of weight, like AWS, Google certifications, to some degree. Programs like Udacity are very well known. There are also like big security, like CCNA certifications and things like that hold a lot of weight in the industry. So my opinion kind of weighs on that. Like, how popular is this certification? Like, is this certification going to be well known? Like, if I mention the AWS, Cloud Architect Associate certification to somebody else in the industry, do they know what that is? Have they heard of it? If they've heard of it, then yeah, it's gonna look good on a resume. I think though any kind of certification can look good on a resume. It shows that you're taking initiative, especially like you mentioned in chat. That's exactly my own motivation too. I want to stay up to date on this stuff too. I used to be in an architect role. And I want to make sure that I'm up to date. Like if I ever get another opportunity to move into an architect role 4 or 5 years down the road, that's kind of my goal, is to be in this role for 4 or 5 years and then maybe get back into architecture. I don't know. Maybe more API architecture, since I'm kind of working in an API first kind of company right now. And we're focusing really heavily on APIs, that maybe that next architect role I get is going to be an architecture role specific around APIs. Then I need to be up to date on how do we deploy this? What kind of tooling is available? Like what kinds of things can we utilize with that? And so staying up to date is a really good reason for that. And if you can specifically share that as your goal, I think that also carries a lot of weight. So as a hiring manager, I would look at, okay, well, you're studying that certification. I might bring that up in an interview and say, hey, tell me about the certification. Like, why are you doing that? What's your progress on it so far? When do you think you're going to wrap it up? If you say like, oh yeah, I just want to make sure that my skills are up to date and that I'm always learning something new, great. That's fantastic. That's exactly what I would want to hear as a hiring manager. Now, if that certification is needed for a role, it can be a little bit different. For example, when I was applying for this job at Amazon to become an AWS certification instructor, like I was trying to get a job to teach the certification classes for people that were trying to get the certification. I didn't have any of their certifications myself. And I think that's why I didn't get the job, is because maybe they had people that were applying for the job that had the certifications that could also teach. Where I was going to come in, I was going to be a great teacher, but I didn't already know the information. So there was more ramp up time. There was more learning curve for me to be able to teach that class when I didn't have the knowledge myself, or at least not to the depth that they needed. And so if you need the certification to get a job, that's a little bit different. You could still apply and say, hey, this is where I'm at. I'm 50% of the way through the curriculum, or I'm 80% of the way through the curriculum, and I'm going to finish in a couple of weeks. But I didn't want to pass up this opportunity to apply and start interviewing, but I'm like 3 weeks away, or I'm 4 weeks away from finishing. Some companies would be like, all right, cool, we'll hire you. We want you to finish. Don't give up on it. Some companies will say like, cool, when you get it, we'll talk, because they want to make sure you're actually going to finish it. If it is a requirement for the job, they want to see that you actually finish it and then come back and reapply. But if they're in a hurry to hire on the team and you don't have that certification, they need to make the decision of, do we hire you anyway because you've been learning it? You may have to show them that progress, though. You may have to show them how much of it you've actually finished, or what you've actually learned about it to date, so that you're not just saying, oh yeah, I'm totally like studying that thing, and then you get the job and you're like, oh shoot, now I need to actually go study the thing because they expect me to know the stuff. So be honest about it with a company. Like if they need a certification and you don't have it, be upfront about it and say, I don't have it, but I'm studying it. This is when I started, and this has been my progression through it, and this is my expected finish date. If you can share that with them, that's going to go a lot farther than I'm currently studying it in sort of this very vague timeline. Like I hope to finish that certification someday. That's less appealing as a hiring manager. But if you can show me the initiative that you're taking and also the why behind it, and I think you kind of touched on that in your question, like you want to do it to stay up to date, which I think is a fantastic motivator. Definitely talk about that in the interview. I think that'll go a long way. Yeah, trust me, I'll finish it. Yeah, exactly. Worst Dodo, good to see you in chat. They ask a question. What's your opinion of the trimodal nature of software engineering salaries in the Netherlands and Europe? No idea. Never read it. I don't have any background in hiring engineers in that location. So I've never read this, and so I have no opinion on it. I will read it. I'm going to like open it in another browser and I will browse it later. But here on the spot, on the stream, I have no idea what this thing is. I don't even know what the word trimodal means. The trimodal nature of software engineering. Actually, now that I see this, I think I might have read this at one point. When was this written? Is there a date on when this was written? Because this kind of looks familiar. I've been a hiring manager at Uber in Amsterdam for 4 years. I have read this. This article is a little bit old, if I remember right. I remember seeing this 2 or 3 years ago, maybe a little bit longer. Does that sound about right? I mean, they're talking about being an engineering manager at Uber. No, well, it was last updated, first published in 2021, but they don't say when. I remember seeing something like this, like the charts in this article remind me of something else that I've read about salaries. I don't know that I've read this exact article though. So no, unfortunately I don't have an opinion on it right now. I'm happy to like read through it and like give an opinion sometime in the future, but right here on the spot, I'm not going to sit here and take the time to read it on the stream. But I appreciate you sharing it, and I will absolutely have a look over it. Do you have specific questions about salaries and hiring and things like that, like when it comes to compensation packages and how they've kind of increased, with pandemics and people working remote and things like that? I'm happy to offer my ideas and perspectives if you have specific questions that I can ask, but I don't recall having read this recently, so I'm not going to have a good answer for you on the spot. I do recall seeing this though. I might have read it last year. I thought there was a blog post like this like a couple of years ago too. I want to say there was a blog post like maybe 3 years ago. I remember seeing something along these lines, but I don't remember seeing this one specifically. Kind of funny that local European startup companies can pay 1/3 of international companies and still get people. Yes. And that was actually, so when I worked at Stream, Stream is based in Amsterdam, and we have an office over here in Colorado. And it was a lot harder for the company to hire developers in the United States because US salaries were so much higher than over in Amsterdam. Some of that is cost of living, and some of that has to do with how countries have like national healthcare systems and things like that. And because cost of living is lower / better in some ways than others, than it is here in the United States, I think that has a big part to play. I have heard of people like living over in Europe being paid United States, like American salaries, and like living like, literally royalty over there because they're making so much money. But I think the expectation is a little bit different as far as work-life balance and cost of living and things like that. And so I think that all of those have an effect on the salaries that are offered. And it can be a lot like that in America too. If a company is headquartered, somewhere that it's not like a major metro area, their salaries are probably going to be lower than a company in the Bay Area because office rent is expensive, people's housing is expensive, therefore their salaries are going to be expensive. You have to raise a lot more money as a business. And so your success is hinging on a lot more, and that's going to drive up costs of things. So yeah, it's a little interesting how over in Europe, because of, I think my 2 cents on it, I think because of the political nature of how countries manage things like healthcare and cost of living and social programs and things like that. I'm not going to say socialism, but social programs where they take care of their people in some way, in some fashion. They're taking care of their population better than America does. I think that's partly why and how they can keep their salaries lower. As far as still attracting people, I think a lot of that still comes down to the mission of what is the company doing? Like, how are we attracting people here? It's certainly not the salary. So you have to really believe in what it is you're doing. And you have to know that you're playing a bigger part in what our company is doing. That would be my perspective on it. I think it'd be an interesting sort of topic to get into with like a panel discussion with people who are over in Europe and kind of get their thoughts and perspectives. It's going to be really hard to get somebody on Europe or from Europe on the stream. We had Gregory Vitek on the stream. He was in Netherlands? I think he was in Amsterdam actually. had him on a late night stream, and it was like 3 a.m. for him over there when he joined, or it was 2 a.m. when we started the call, and then the stream went for like 2 hours long. It was 4 a.m. when he went to bed. And I felt really bad that we kept him up that late. So it's going to be really hard to get someone from Europe on the stream to discuss this kind of thing. But I think that that would make for a really interesting kind of discussion topic about why are salaries lower over there than they are in America? Is it just the cost of living and the cost of food and like the overall just cost of being an employee versus their social programs and taxes and things like that? Because they get taxed a lot higher than we do over here in America. Their taxes in some of those countries, they're like, oh yeah, free healthcare. But a lot of people don't really mention like the 30, 40, 50% tax rates that they're paying. But those taxes are very efficiently used in ways that build up a lot of social programs and they take care of their people. So I think it's a trade-off. I know it's kind of going a little bit off the rails for a typical topic of discussion that we have here on the stream, but those would be some of my initial thoughts at least. Dev Crush says, I can't imagine somebody living in Norway having a desire to move to America, for example. I mean, it depends. It depends on their hopes and their dreams and what they want. And, you know, I moved from Canada to America because there were better opportunities here for development than at least for the kind of development that I wanted to be doing. There wasn't very much web development in the Ottawa area at the time when I moved to the United States. There was way more web development in the States. If I had stayed in Ottawa, I would have felt a lot more constrained to doing telecommunications type of development, like building phone systems and network systems and like network appliances and like the actual hardware, like building firmware for hardware for things like, you know, routers and switches and, you know, things like that. And that wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I thought it was when I got out of college. I thought I wanted to be working on networking gear and things like that because it was really intriguing to me in college. Once I got in looking at it, I'm like, meh, not so much. I wanted to do more web development, and there just wasn't as much opportunity in Ottawa. And so I came to the States. There was way more opportunity here. And I'm like, well, if I have to move for an opportunity, I might as well move somewhere that I'm going to make more money, have way more, you know, accessibility to jobs and things like that. And, you know, thankfully with North America free trade agreement, it made it really easy to come to the States and make that happen. But that was my experience. Not everybody's going to have that same experience, especially if you're coming from somewhere that's not North America. You're going to find it much harder to get into the United States than others. Same problem here in Canada. Salaries are low relative to US counterparts. That was another part of why I left Canada for sure. Potato Cabbage, I'm curious where in Canada you are. So I grew up in the Northwest Territories, and then I went to high school and college in Ontario, lived in Ottawa for 4 years, and then I moved down to the States in 2000. I'm curious where you are up north. Dev Crush says in chat, I'm going to be writing readmes for a number of my previous projects and putting them on GitHub to help with future applications. I think that's a great idea. Would looking at that portfolio be of interest to you or the stream? Sure. I think being able to evaluate like what kinds of things have you worked on and what kinds of bullet points you're putting together, whether it's a README format like that or like your long form resume, I'd be curious to take a look at that and give you some feedback on it. Whether it's here on the stream or privately, I'd be happy to do that either way. But yeah, I could see how some people would have an interest in seeing that kind of thing, Dev Crush, if you're interested in sharing that. I'm going to skip ahead in my question list because this one's a little longer. I hope it's going to fit on the screen. If not, I'll trim it down. We'll see whether it fits here. Oh, it is going to fit. This one was asked recently on LinkedIn, and I wanted to discuss this one on the stream tonight. I did give this person some feedback on LinkedIn, so I've already had this conversation, but I wanted to kind of bring this up on the stream as well, because I think that it was a really interesting question to dive into. Potato Cabbage is from Toronto. What part of Toronto? Toronto is kind of a big area. Are you like in GTA or are you in like the surrounding kind of, well, I guess GTA is the surrounding area. Are you in like downtown Toronto or are you in like some other part of Toronto? Like suburbs, like Whitby, Scarborough, Newmarket, Oshawa, or are you on the west side, like Mississauga, you know, kind of thing? Just curious. I'm pretty familiar with the Toronto area. It's a pretty great city. Dev Crush is wonderful. I'll sure to give you a link when I finish it. That'd be great. Sorry, Potato Cabbage. I don't mean to put you on the spot. Like, I'm not asking for a street address. I'm just curious if you're like right in Toronto, like proper, or if you're in like a surrounding kind of city. I don't mean to like dox you on the internet or anything. I'm just curious. Cool. Alrighty. Yeah, so I'm going to get to this question. So this one is a little bit longer, and I'll kind of give you a little more context because this wasn't the whole question. But basically, this person reached out and said, I applied for a job, and the recruiter reached back out, and they wanted me to do this 1 hour, or they told me I had 1 hour to build some software in JavaScript that was manipulating or deleting linked lists. And I wrote them back, basically speaking as the person. They basically said, they wrote back to the recruiter and said, I'm really not interested in doing a linked list problem. Can the team interview me about something like React and JavaScript and front end work? Because that's what I'm going to be doing on the job. Like, is that a possibility to do instead of this linked list thing? And basically the recruiter wrote them back and said, you sure you don't want to do it? Because the team really likes you. And the way that they phrased it to me in their message made it sound like the recruiter was telling them, like, if you don't do this linked list problem, you're basically forfeiting the interview. And so the way that I kind of rephrased it in Discord was, a recruiter asked me to do a take-home challenge where I had an hour to write 2 JavaScript functions that manipulated linked lists. I asked if they could test me in React and front-end work instead. The recruiter made it sound like I was going to give up on the opportunity if I didn't do the linked list assignment, and also kind of added this pressure saying, like, hey, the team really likes you. Like, are you sure you don't want to do it? First of all, I think putting pressure on a candidate, like, hey, the team really likes you, we'd really like you to do that problem, is kind of a lousy way of doing it. I think as a candidate, if you kind of tell the recruiter, like, hey, you know what, this, like, is this really relevant to the job? Because in JavaScript, you're not really dealing with a lot of these advanced data structures. You're not dealing with linked lists. You're not dealing with binary trees. My counterpoint to this person, though, was, yeah, but the company does need to see your problem-solving experience. Like, they need to see how you're breaking a problem into pieces. They need to see how you're solving each of those smaller portions of work and how you're assembling that together into a solution. So whether it's a linked list problem or a React kind of challenge, like, either way, they're seeing the same thing. But it does show a little bit of immaturity on the company side, A, that they're answering back by putting pressure on you, but B, that their interview process wasn't more realistic. Like, if it was a React front-end kind of job, they shouldn't be asking you linked list problems, because you're not going to be building linked lists and maintaining linked lists in JavaScript. It's just, I don't think I've ever seen that in my career. If anybody can prove me wrong, if you can point to like production level code where you're using linked lists in JavaScript, okay. I've never seen it in my career. And so I think it shows some immaturity on the company side that they put pressure on in response, but they also had a bad interview challenge in the first place. If it's a front-end job, a front-end role in React, they shouldn't be having you doing stuff with linked lists. That's my 2 cents. Dev Crush says in chat, it's a bold question to ask, but the response is interesting. Yeah, and I think that by pushing back on the company, I think it shows some maturity on this person's part to say, like, hey, I would really rather interview and show the skills that I'm going to be using every day at the company. Is there something different that we could do? And basically I encourage them, like, you know what, sometimes these are the hoops that we have to jump through. If you really like the company, you really like the role, like, you could think about it. But I also told them that I thought that they were right. I said, I think that you did a good job pushing back on the company and letting them realize and letting them know that what their expectation was for the interview was not realistic. That even though it was a take-home assignment and a take-home, like, sort of assessment to do, I think that this person was in the right by pushing back on it and say, Like, really? The job is React. Why do you have me doing linked list stuff? Like, it's not the same thing. Sitting down, like, I know like this much about React. It's been on my goal. I'm like halfway through some curriculum with Udacity doing a React like nano degree thing. So I know like this much React, and it's very different. It's completely different code than manipulating linked lists. Like, yes, you still have to write some JavaScript logic, and you still have to have good software design and things like that. But like manipulating linked lists, like once you memorize the functions that you need to do in a linked list, like how do you delete a node? Well, you make my current node point to the next node's next node. And now that node becomes detached out of your linked list. Like once you know how to do that kind of stuff and you memorize that stuff and you know how to implement it, like what's the point? I don't see a lot of point in that kind of stuff. And you'll hear me talk a lot about that on the stream. Like I see why we have things like LeetCode in our technical challenge portion of our interviews. But I think that companies need to do a better job finding LeetCode problems that are more in line with what the company does as work, instead of just, here's some random LeetCode thing, go find, how many liters of water fit in blah, 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 based on this data structure, et cetera, et cetera. It's like, what does that have to do with what I'm going to be doing day to day on the job? Like, yes, it is problem solving. Yes, it is creative thinking. Yes, it is like putting you under pressure and seeing how you can do your job. Yes. But at least make it relevant to what the company does. Like, my goodness, why put people through, like I've talked about this an enormous amount on the stream, and I need to probably stop talking about it, but an interview that I did back in like November, December, they had me do a LeetCode challenge about geolocation on a grid. Like, you've got all these latitude, longitude points on a grid. We're going to give you a target. We want you to find N number of points on that grid closest to that target point. And I'm like, in my mind, half of my brain cycles are like, how do I solve this problem? And the other half of my brain cycles are like, why are you asking me a geolocation problem? Your company has nothing to do with geolocation. And so my attention is divided as a candidate because you've asked me something that's so far beyond like what I'm going to be doing at this job for this company. And it was a company that I really wanted to kind of work at too. It just struck me as really odd. Like, why would you ask a question like that? So same kind of thing with this individual. They reached out on LinkedIn and they're like, should I have to do a linked list kind of problem if I'm going to be taking a React job? And my instinct is like, I think it's good that you pushed back, but and yes, it doesn't feel good from the company's perspective to put pressure on you to just go solve the problem and just do the problem. It's an hour of work. It's a take-home assessment, so like you can go look up the algorithms and just get the work done, get it finished. But it doesn't feel good as a candidate. It doesn't feel good to have to work on things that are so irrelevant to what you're going to be doing on the job. And that's the one of the biggest flaws that I see in tech interviews in our industry, is that a lot of the interview is just so completely irrelevant from what we're doing on a day-to-day basis that it just makes no sense at all for us. Yeah. Catching up on chat here. Potato cabbages in Scarborough, cool. And an innovative startup. Yeah, so you'll see a thing dropping in chat from time to time, like right here, saying if you could go follow my Ian the Postmanot account. I would appreciate, a follow there. It's my account for work. I do live streaming for work, and they want to see growth there. You don't have to come by and hang out unless you want to come heckle me while I work on things over my lunch hour. But yeah, if you can at least give it a follow, I'd appreciate it. It's just Ian the Postmanot here on Twitch. And like once I finish this 30-day challenge, like I mentioned, I'm going to be giving away a copy of this graphic novel called The API First World. And it's actually a really well done graphic novel. Like they've done a really good job with illustrations and stuff like that. Like it's a pretty nerdy theme. Not gonna lie, it's a pretty nerdy thing. But I have a shrink wrapped copy that I'm gonna ship elsewhere in the world to people that follow. So I'm working through a 30-day challenge at work right now, and once I wrap that up, I'm gonna give that book away, and then I'm gonna use that account to stream like what I'm actually doing on the job. So as a developer relations person, what kind of stuff am I working on? What kind of blog post am I doing? What kind of like proposals am I putting together for speaking at conferences and stuff like that? And so if you're interested in that kind of stuff, you're welcome to come by and kind of learn while I learn, going through Postman, but then also learning like some of the underlying things that I'm doing in Postman. For example, I figured out on Postman how to make these lights blink without me having to hit a button on my Stream Deck. It's like, oh, I got a new follower, let me hit this button. I actually have Postman now watching my follower count, and if the follower count goes up, it makes the lights blink. At least like in between runs. So I have to manually run it. There's a way I can run it on a 5-minute timer, but I can't go more often than 5 minutes. What I'm probably going to do is I'm probably going to throw it on this little Linux machine like right here. This is a little Linux box right here. And I can actually just have that as a long running process, where it's just going to like, run forever and, go hit Twitch, get my follower count, and then like make these things blink. I'll probably have that on a more regular kind of job. Twitch has some really cool APIs that I want to kind of plug into. The one thing, so with their API, you can sort of connect and say like, hey, get my follower count, and then you can say if that increased, then make the lights blink. They have something that and then it disconnects, and then the next time you want to check, you have to connect, get the count, do the whole thing again. And you have to do that over and over again. They have another type of API called PubSub, which is a publisher subscriber kind of mechanism where you just connect once and you say like, I'm just going to stay on the line until you tell me that there's an event that I can handle. And then when I get that event, I'm going to unpack it and see what it is, and I'm going to go take some action. The problem is their PubSub doesn't include followers. It includes things like, if you donate bits or if you like reach a goal or something, like those kinds of events come over PubSub, but they don't have PubSub for followers, which is a mechanism I'd much rather use instead of like connecting and disconnecting, connecting, disconnecting all the time. But I think it would be interesting to do at least while I'm live on the stream. Like if there was some way that I could have that script see that I'm live on Twitch and then start running, because I only need those lights to blink when I'm actually on the stream. I don't need the lights to blink when I'm not on the stream. So if I'm streaming and I see a new follower come in, then make the lights blink. That would be kind of cool. So I'm looking at automating that kind of stuff. It's pretty fun, and I'm trying to find ways of doing it in Postman. So I'll be streaming about that during the day. Like once I finish this 30-day challenge, that'll be my daytime. So long explanation, but if you can go follow this username up here in the chat, Ian the Postmanaut, I would appreciate it. You can go check that out. I've got a bunch of videos up there already. Can you have it parse chat? I don't know that the PubSub, the PubSub might. And I do know that when someone follows me, that Stream Elements will send a little message saying like, hey, thanks for the follow, so-and-so. If the chat messages come over PubSub, then I could have the PubSub connection watch for Stream Elements to respond. And then if it sees a message from Stream Elements, then make the lights flash. I would just have to make sure that I'm really careful about how I'm parsing the message, because I've got all these other automated messages like, drop your questions in chat. So I don't want to just have it, flash the lights anytime it sees something from Stream Elements. But some of the stuff on their API is actually really, really cool. There's some really neat people that stream on Twitch where they're just building all kinds of bots and tools and stuff like that around the Twitch API to make things a lot more interactive. So cool. Viable Climb Member, good to see you. Appreciate the follow on that other account too. So thanks for that. Cool. Well, that was an hour and a half. It went by kind of quick. I'm going to go mark this other question in Discord as having been answered. So I got one more left in Discord that I didn't get to tonight, but I'm going to wrap up there. I got some other stuff I want to take care of. I do want to go hang out on Chris Perillo's stream. I sent him some of those articulated dragons, and I sent him a couple of sets of Mandalorian pins for being on my stream a couple of weeks ago. It was nice having him hang out, so I sent him a little gift package, and he took pictures and posted it on Twitter. So I want to go swing by his channel and see if he'll show them again over there. So yeah, we'll go raid Chris, and then we'll wrap it up for the night. So thanks for hanging out. Iopta, good morning to you, I guess. I'm not sure where you're located, where it's morning, but it's 8:30 p.m. where I live, and you showed up just in time for us to go raid Chris Perillo and shut down for the evening. So RC Maniac says in chat, the most impressive Twitch integration was someone who wrote a video game that integrates with Twitch. That'd be pretty sweet. It's always morning somewhere. Yeah, for sure. I've seen some really cool Twitch integrations. A lot of like really cool overlays, like this whole like drop game that we can play. Oops, I guess I posted that over in Discord because I was clicking on the wrong thing. Like this whole drop game that we have. You know, there's some interesting sort of overlays that you can get that kind of interact with Twitch and stuff like that. So yeah, they got some pretty neat things out there for sure. Yeah, like some really clever folks have done some really great work putting things like that together. RC Maniac says, when someone raids, the virtual room explodes. A pirate ship shows up. Oh, I saw one. Who is it that does that? I did see one where like a pirate shows up, and it like changes their background, and it makes it look like a pirate walks in the door and like, you know, there's a pirate or something like that. I've seen some really interesting things, and it's all automated. So a lot of that stuff is really, really well done. I'm trying to think of who it is. I think I used to follow them on Twitch, but I can't think of who it is. It's not Odat Nerd. It's someone else now. Oh, it's gonna bug me now. No, I don't think it was Duig Swift. It was someone else that like they do coding on Twitch, and it was all about Twitch API. And just every time you go check out their stream, they're like coding up some new like Twitch integration kind of thing. Odat Nerd does a lot of Twitch integration stuff too. They've been working on some really neat stuff around like watching giveaways and like doing giveaway timers and stuff like that. Cool. Well, let's go set up this raid for Chris, and then we'll go hang out over there. Yo soy Nate Brown. Good to have you in chat. Give you some linky lights and some applause. Playing Pokemon Red on Twitch for the first time was a peak integration. That's cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for dropping by, everybody. We'll see you on Thursday for more Q&A. If you want a resume review, please submit it. Here's the link right here. techinterview.guide/resume review. Just anonymize your contact info. That's all I ask. You can keep other stuff on there if you choose to, but I do ask that because it's showing up here and I do put it on YouTube later, like hide your email address and your phone number. Don't put that stuff on the internet. But I'm happy to do free resume reviews for 2022. We'll make them all free. So yeah, we'll help people get their jobs in tech. So anything I can do to help out. Appreciate everybody dropping by. Appreciate all the chat. Love that very much. Thank you for hanging out. Let's go raid Chris. So we will raid Chris Perillo, and we will see you all on Thursday. Cool. In 3 seconds, 2, 1. Cool. We'll see you over there, everyone. Cheers.